NASCAR silly season is about to begin as Kroger could be leaving JTG Daugherty Racing at the end of 2024. Erik Jones will not race this weekend at Dover, and the AllStar format for 2024 has been revealed. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Denny Hamlin's 2024 Mavis tire scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. It's a decent paint scheme, in my opinion, not absolutely perfect. I think it's a little better than last year's scheme, in my opinion. It's decent, and I'm looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Dover. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2024 Air Force Xfinity scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. I absolutely love this paint scheme. It kind of looks like his paint schemes from back in 2017 when he drove for Richard Petty Motorsports. It looks great. I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Dover. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sam Mayer's 2024 NASCAR refuel scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover, I believe. This paint scheme's all right in my opinion. I don't love the colors that much, to be honest. It's okay. I'm hoping he can have a good run, though, in this paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2024 Hungry Get Jack scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. All right paint scheme, in my opinion. JTG's been hit or miss at times. This one's okay, in my opinion, but it's not absolutely amazing. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Ellis's 2024 Cold Trickle throwback scheme that we're going to see at Darlington. I love this paint scheme a lot. I've always been a big fan of Cold Trickle throwbacks. This one's no exception. I think it looks amazing and really great, to be honest with you. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Parker Kligerman's 2024 Motley Crue scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. Love this paint scheme a lot, like the black, and I'm really glad to see the Motley Crue back in the sport and sponsoring an organization this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Todd Gilliland's 2024 A&W scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. This is an alright paint scheme, in my opinion, but it's pretty cool to see that A&W, obviously Jerry Freeze works with a couple big companies. Not surprised to see the A&W sponsoring. It's pretty cool to see him sponsoring Todd Gilliland this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2024 The Pete Store scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. I think it's an alright paint scheme, in my opinion. It's not perfect by any stretch of imagination, but I think it's a decent paint scheme and looking forward to see out on the racetrack this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece's 2024 Morton Building scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. There's a little bit of difference from last year's scheme, but not a ton of change, to be honest, for this weekend. It does look solid, though, and I'm looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend at Dover. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Dye's 2024 RTSS scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Dover. It's an alright paint scheme, in my opinion. It's definitely a really good cost for sure. It's okay, but glad to see that Daniel Dye will be back in the Xfinity Series. Pretty cool stuff, and hopefully Daniel Dye can have a good run with this paint scheme this weekend. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about MillerTech. As it was announced yesterday that MillerTech is going to sponsor Noah Gragson this weekend at Dover. MillerTech is one of the biggest up-and-coming technology brands currently in the United States, and it is another new sponsor for Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson has been sponsored by companies like Bass Pro Shops and Black Rifle Coffee throughout the year. Overstock is also sponsored for some races, and there's been some other big companies that have come in, and now you've got MillerTech that is going to sponsor him this weekend. It's really exciting to see that Noah Gragson does, in fact, have a new sponsor for this weekend at Dover, and I'm really happy to see that, not HP, which we'll get to here in just a little bit, but MillerTech, pretty excited to see another tech company will be working with Noah Gragson in 2024. And now we're going ahead to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chiles. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Monday that Chiles is trying to show up in unexpected places and get people talking about Chiles where they've been sponsoring NASCAR drivers. So far this year, they sponsor Corey LaJoie in the Daytona 500, I think, and a couple other races they have planned as well for the season. And they also sponsored Stuart Friesen a couple weekends ago at Texas Motor Speedway. Chiles is one of the biggest chains currently in the United States, and it's pretty cool to see that Chiles has been working their way into the sport a lot more frequently, and they're working to sponsor more drivers this year. It's going to be very interesting to see if they do decide to sponsor more drivers going forward in 2024. Maybe they go sponsor a driver like Kyle Larson down the road, even though Kyle Larson's got a prime sponsorship at this point. It'd be very interesting to see if they go after like a driver like Bubba Wallace, perhaps, or they sponsor another big-name driver. Nonetheless, it's really cool to see that Chiles is showing up in the sport, and it's exciting to see if they are sponsoring drivers in NASCAR. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Michael Jordan. Now, I think I talked about this on the channel on Monday, but Michael Jordan was actually at Talladega Superspeedway when his car was able to go to Victory Lane. Of course, Tyler Reddick, who drives a 45 car, went to Victory Lane on Sunday, and Michael Jordan was in attendance, and he was very happy and very excited to see his car go to Victory Lane. We talked about this quite a bit. Michael Jordan is very invested and he's a big race fan. And he's been at the track a lot more frequently and he's been close to seeing his cars go to Victory Lane. You think about the trajectory of 23XI Racing, 6 wins as an organization, and now having one of the owners of your team show up on a week-by-week basis when he's got more free time now, I think is absolutely amazing. So I'm just happy to see that he's coming out to the racetrack a lot more frequently and he's showing up to support his drivers. Nonetheless, really awesome and exciting stuff, and I'm glad to see that Michael Jordan is continuing to show up at the racetrack, and he is continuing to support his drivers in NASCAR. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chad Fincham. As it was announced a couple days ago that Chad Fincham is going to drive the 66 for MBM Motorsports this weekend at Dover. Chad Fincham has made a couple starts so far with MBM Motorsports over the years. In fact, he drove for them back in like 2017 and 2018, and he's made a couple starts with this team as well. Chad Fincham, I think, is definitely a very talented driver, but you have to also remember this. Chad Fincham, I think, is only 28 or 29 years old, so he still has plenty of time to make a career out of himself. We'll see how he ends up doing this weekend. They do have to qualify into the race, but they did qualify into the race at Talladega, so we'll see if they can make the show. They basically are last in the owners' points still at this point, so we'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see if they can be able to go ahead and make the show this weekend at Dover. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Akinori Ogata. As it was announced a couple days ago that Akinori Ogata will drive the 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports later this year at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Akinori Ogata has multiple races selected throughout 2024. I think he's going to be running either Darlington or Charlotte later this year, and I think he's got a couple of the races that are scheduled with Joey Gase Motorsports. In fact, I think he drove the 35 car at Martinsville a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think Akinori is talented driver. He's won some races over at Hickory. He's competed for championships over at Hickory, and I think it's just exciting to see that Akinori wants to come in and race in the sport. To be honest with you, realistically, their goal is to just make the show and be able to get as many laps completed as possible because let's be real and honest, I'm not expecting Akinori Ogata to do much in 2024 in the race he runs. Nonetheless, I'm glad to see that he's getting a chance and opportunity to drive for this team at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about HP. As it was officially confirmed this morning that HP will become a title sponsor of Ferrari. The team is going to be called Scuderia Ferrari HP. HP, which is one of the big tech companies, not just in the United States, but also in the world, Hewlett-Packard, it is still one of the big companies currently that is used. In fact, I have an HP laptop as we speak. I am excited to see that HP is coming in to sponsor Ferrari. Obviously, a lot of people were worried that there was going to be a major name change, and they're worried what the title sponsor was going to be. Some thought it was going to be HP Scuderia Ferrari, but now it's going to be Scuderia Ferrari HP. And this is going into effect for the next race, which is, I believe, next week in Miami, which is going to be the first race that's going to be run at kind of a traditional time because a lot of these races have happened early in the morning. Nonetheless, congratulations and really excited to see that HP is going to be sponsoring Scuderia Ferrari in 2024 starting this year and will sponsor for the majority of time. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chinese Grand Prix TV ratings. So we haven't really had a lot of F1 ratings come out recently, but it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that ESPN got 626,000 viewers for F1's Chinese Grand Prix that aired at 3 a.m. Eastern on Sunday. That is up 133% from 268,000 viewers, but keep in mind that was on ESPN2, and also that's all the way back in 2019 when Formula One wasn't growing. That is a decent viewership number for an F1 race, but it's still under 1 million. Keep in mind, Formula One has been declining in the United States, and less people are tuning in. Obviously, with it being a much different time for the race to happen early in the morning, not as many people are going to tune in, sadly. And also, let's be real and honest, this year in Formula One has not been the most exciting. There really isn't a championship battle right now. Max Verstappen's back up being almost a race ahead, and he's likely going to win the championship very early in the season. So when you have a series that's being dominated by one driver, the racing is not that exciting. You do have a pretty big problem, and you're going to have a much more difficult time getting people to tune into your races. I really hope it could change for Formula One with some new regulations going forward into the future. But right now, I just don't know what's going to change because I know there's some regulations coming in. A lot of people are looking for the regulations. There's also going to be some new driver movement happening for 2025, and there could be some driver movement that's happening in the coming weeks. Nonetheless, a little disappointed with the TV ratings for the Chinese Grand Prix, but sadly, I'm not shocked or surprised by the TV ratings, to be honest with you. A little disappointing, but not really surprising. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Theo Pucher. As it was announced yesterday that Theo Pucher will be driving the 6 for Aric McLaren this weekend at Barber. Theo Pucher made his IndyCar debut earlier this weekend at the Long Beach Grand Prix, which we're going to talk about TV ratings here in just a second. But Theo Pucher, of course, the F2 champion last year in 2023, made his debut last week at Long Beach and was very, very impressive. I believe he was the highest finishing Aric McLaren driver in the race and finished 11th in his debut. I think Theo Pucher is an incredibly talented driver. Now, what does this mean for David Malukas? Obviously, David Malukas has a lot of uncertainty on his future if he's going to stay with Aric McLaren in 2025. Yes, he does have a contract with them for multiple seasons, but it's still unclear and unknown when David Malukas is going to be back because the injury is more serious than we originally realized. That's what they said. Obviously, I really am wishing the best for David Malukas to get back behind the wheel really, really soon, but at the same token and same time, this is an amazing and great opportunity for Theo Pucher. I'm wishing the best of luck this weekend at Barber. I think, especially with the speed that they've shown, that being Aric McLaren over the years, I would not be surprised or shocked if Theo Pucher could get a top 10, and maybe, just maybe, we could see Theo Pucher surprise a lot of people and contend for the victory this weekend at Barber. We'll see how he ends up doing this weekend at Barber Motorsports Park. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Long Beach Grand Prix TV ratings. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that USA got 307,000 viewers for Sunday's IndyCar race at Long Beach. There's no direct comparison to 2023 because that race was on NBC, but that race got over 1 million viewers, 1.026 million. That means that only 1/3 of the viewership that watched the race in 2023 tuned in to this year's Grand Prix of Long Beach. That, in my opinion, is just absolutely unacceptable that the ratings are that far down, especially with TV negotiations going on and rumors and rumblings that IndyCar could be going over to Fox. That, in my opinion, is just completely unacceptable for the ratings to be that far down. Now, what are the contributing factors to the ratings being down? Well, one of the big reasons is this on USA. People are cutting away from cable altogether completely. And I don't think the Peacock numbers are going to help that much. But people are cutting away from cable, they're going to streaming, and they're going to main broadcast. The second biggest thing is a lack of promotion. This race got very little promotion outside of the fact that there were basically the only promotion that this race got was basically the rumors that Long Beach was going to be picked up by NASCAR. So having only 300,000 people tune in, the other big factor is this race went up against NASCAR at the exact same time when the race happened. I don't know why IndyCar does not learn their lesson. They should not go up against NASCAR. Roger owns a team in the Cup Series, by the way, so you would think he'd know not to run the NASCAR Cup Series race or the IndyCar race, I should say, at the same time as the Talladega race. Even though Talladega was down a little bit, we'll get to that in just a little bit here, it still is unacceptable for the ratings to be that far down. IndyCar absolutely and desperately needs to make some drastic changes and drastic moves for this series to survive. Otherwise, they're going to fall into obscurity, and we don't want that, especially for IndyCar. It needs to change relatively quickly, and I really hope they can make some executive moves to try to fix this. They are bringing some new groups in there. Zach Brown's going to try to help grow it. I really hope he can make some changes to really help it, because in all honesty, in all seriousness, it is just unacceptable that the IndyCar ratings are down as bad as they are. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Quall. is it was announced on Monday that Carson Quall is going to drive the 88 for Junior Motorsports this weekend at Dover. He will make his second Xfinity Series start this weekend, as Carson Quall did make his debut a couple weekends ago at Martinsville. And I gotta say, Carson Quall was extremely impressive. He finished inside the top 5, I think in 4th place if I'm not mistaken, and at times during the race at Martinsville, he had one of the fastest cars on the racetrack. And I believe Carson Quall is one of the most talented up-and-coming drivers in the late model scene, obviously the son of Travis Quall, who of course was a Truck Series champion all the way back in 2003, right around the time that Carson Quall was born. Now, realistically, what are the expectations of Carson Quall this weekend? I think that Carson Quall, in all honesty and all seriousness, could be a winning contender. It feels like the Junior Motorsports cars are starting to show a lot more pace and a lot more speed. They won a couple of weekends ago at Texas Motor Speedway, and they have been up front a lot more consistently in recent weeks. Realistically, I think that Carson will get a top 5 this weekend. I don't think he's going to win, but I am happy to see a Dale Jr. is trying to support Carson getting an opportunity, because I know a lot of people were wondering if Carson Quall was going to get another start this year. But luckily for everybody, he will get the chance and opportunity to race with this team going into the weekend at Dover. I think he's going to be very successful. I'm excited to see him get the chance and opportunity, and I'm looking forward to see Carson Quall getting the race, that number 88 car once again this weekend at Dover. Looking forward to it and wishing him the best of luck this weekend at Dover. Hopefully going to do really, really good this weekend in that car at Dover. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Talladega TV ratings from this past weekend. So according to Adam Stern, Fox got 4.307 million viewers for the Cup race at Talladega. That is down 5% from 2023, where that race got 4.554 million viewers, dropping down by a little over 200,000 viewers, though it does need to be noted that there were a ton of NBA playoff games that were going on at the same time. I did see basically Erik Almirola, who is one of the executives at Fox, trying to basically defend them from being down a little bit, and they did say their peak viewership was at like 5.5 million at one point, which has been up consistently 5 or 6% from last year. Still, that is a decent drop in TV ratings, but it's not the worst drop I have seen. It's probably the biggest drop I've seen so far this year, outside of maybe the Richmond race, if I'm not mistaken. There haven't been a lot of races that have really dropped massively this year so far. NASCAR, I think, is still on the up and up. Now, why could the TV ratings be down? Like I said, you did have a bunch of NBA playoff games that were going on at the same time as a Cup Series race was going on. But number 2, I know a lot of people stopped tuning into the Cup Series race because the Fox coverage, and I've talked about this a lot, but the Fox coverage was just absolutely horrendous this past weekend. It was not very good, and I think people stopped tuning in because, like I said, the coverage that Fox put on was not only unacceptable, but it was really, really unwatchable in my honest opinion. So I'm not surprised or shocked to see the ratings are down, sadly, because of that. Less people wanted to tune in because obviously it was just not very fun and it was very unwatchable. Nonetheless, the ratings are down a little bit. Hopefully they can go back up. We're going to be on FS1 for the next few weeks. Hopefully the ratings can go back up here really, really soon. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. As Hendrick Motorsports announced yesterday that Kyle Busch will be at the Hendrick Homecoming on May 25th. Reason to bring Kyle Busch out is because Kyle Busch, of course, was a former driver at Hendrick Motorsports. That's really where he got his career started in the Xfinity Series back in 2003, all the way up until 2007 when he left Hendrick Motorsports at the end of the 2007 season to go over to Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch had a lot of success in the Xfinity Series especially, but he did win a few Cup Series races, won twice in 2005, that being at Fontana and Phoenix. Then he won in New Hampshire in 2006, and then in 2007 won at Bristol Motor Speedway. But then, like I said, Kyle Busch left Hendrick Motorsports and went over to JGR. Obviously, it's really cool to see that Kyle Busch has burned a bridge the bridge is basically now back together with Hendrick Motorsports. I think it'd be really exciting to see Kyle Busch drive a Hendrick car once again in the future, not at least in the Cup Series, because some are going to say, oh, replace Kyle Busch at Alex Bowman, basically replace Alex Bowman with Kyle Busch, despite the fact that Kyle Busch is a lot older at this point. Alex Bowman's in the top 10 in the standings, so I don't know why you would replace him. But I love that they're bringing him back. I would love to see him in an Xfinity Series car maybe in the 17 car in the futures, I think Kyle Busch could go out there and win. Maybe this could open up the opportunity for that to happen. But I don't know if there's any other race that Kyle Busch has scheduled for Xfinity. I don't think he's announced anything for Xfinity up to this point. Maybe they could find a way to get him a start. But I'm excited to see this and glad to see that Kyle Busch will be at the Hendrick Homecoming later this year. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pylons. Now, obviously, over the weekend, there was a lot of talk about the scoring pylons being removed at Talladega Superspeedway. Now, Bray Card, who is a fellow YouTuber and journalist in the industry, I believe, put out a video but a post talking about him. And according to him, he says that the company that manufactured the pylons no longer makes parts of them. And according to him as well, it sounds like it is $5 million for the investment. Okay. So they cost $5 million to get LED light systems for the parts and to make a new pylon. NASCAR makes millions of dollars a year from the tracks and everything else. You're telling me that they basically can do all this stuff, promote the sport, but you don't have enough money to make a new scoring pylon, and you're telling people to go to the video boards. This is how they should at least communicate it at first. And it shouldn't take a YouTuber, no disrespect to Bray Card, but it shouldn't take a YouTuber to have to tell people exactly what's going on. That should be on NASCAR to communicate that information to people. That being said, like I said, you're telling me you don't have enough money to make a scoring pylon when you're making millions of dollars and you're going to be making billions of dollars next year. Starting in 2025, the sport altogether is making $1.1 billion. You're telling me that you don't have enough money to spend $5 million on a scoring pylon and get LED light systems like Indianapolis has? I think it's just laziness at this point from NASCAR, and I truly do believe that they do need to get these scoring pylons made. I don't know why they haven't done it at this point. It needs to change. Hopefully they do listen to some of the frustration that fans have had, and I really hope they can go ahead and start making the scoring pylons so that fans can be happy, because I think scoring pylons are a big part of the experience of the track. I really hope NASCAR listens and they do finally go ahead and add the scoring pylons, because they absolutely need to for the sport to be a much better place. And now we're going ahead to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Conor Moxley. As it was announced yesterday that Conor Moxley will be driving the 7 for Spire Motorsports for 5 races in 2024. His first start will come at Kansas Speedway next weekend. Then he'll race at Charlotte a couple weeks down the road. Then he'll race at Pocono. Then he'll race in the summer Kansas race or the fall Kansas race. And then his final race will be at Homestead Miami Speedway. Conor Moxley has been in the sport over the course of the last couple of years. He originally drove in the Trans Am Series, but has been trying to transition to oval racing over the course of the last few years. He already does have a few other races, I believe, scheduled with Nice Motorsports and the number 45 team. I'm going to be real and honest here. I have never rated Conor Moxley that highly as a driver. I think he's a solid road course racer, and he's done good on road courses, but outside of that, he has just struggled on ovals for the most part. Now, to be fair, he did win an ARCA race. I know some people say he might have won Kansas. I don't remember exactly if he did. I thought it was Pocono, but I know he got a win last year in ARCA at one of the tracks that is on his schedule. Realistically, he needs to run really, really good because this is the best equipment in the truck series. I think Spire Motorsports is the best team all around, all together in trucks, because that's basically what KBM was. And that 7 truck has already won 2 races so far this year. And Connor Zillage, who will be driving a separate truck with the team at some point this year, basically almost won and came back and won a COTA. You need to realistically be going out there and contending for wins, but realistically, I don't think Connor Zillage is going to do it. I think he'll get top 10s probably, but I think he's probably going to perform how Chase Purdy's done with the team. I just really don't expect much from Conor Moxley this year, sadly. I think he's going to struggle quite a bit, and I don't think that he is going to run very, very well. I don't think he's going to contend for wins. I think he's going to underachieve in that equipment, sadly, because he has struggled for the most part. If it was a road course, I definitely think he would be probably contending a lot more, but realistically, I don't think Conor Moxley is going to do much. But at the same time, it is a great opportunity, and I really hope he can make the best out of it with Spire Motorsports in the 2024 season in the select races he is going to run. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, we'll talk about the AllStar format in just a little bit. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen, because he won the Chicago Street Course race last year, he is actually eligible to run the AllStar race in 2024. But according to Bob Pockris, he is right now is not planning to run the AllStar race at this current time. which in my opinion is a great shame because Shane Van Gisbergen needs to run as many races as he can because there's a lot of talk of possibilities that Shane Van Gisbergen could be a full-time Cup driver in 2024. And why not get more experience on short tracks, right? Why not go out there and get more experience? I really hope he does change his mind because SVG, the more experience he gets, the better he is going to be. Though I will say that I think he is absolutely ready for the Cup Series. He's been doing a great job in Xfinity so far this year, and he's put up some really solid and really great numbers. And if he was to run the All-Star race this year, if they can get the sponsorship and funding for him to run the All-Star race, I think you've got an opportunity here for him to run in a third Kaulig racing car, that number 13, which would be an open entry. But because AJ Allmendinger is going to be running the All-Star race in the 16 car, you would have to open up a third car for SVG, or if Trackhouse wanted to, perhaps, they could run a third car for him at the event. He's got Red Bull sponsorship as well they could work with, and they could find a way to integrate that in there. So right now it's a little disappointing here that he is not running it at this time, but maybe they'll change their minds and let him run it next month, which the All-Star race is about a month away at this point. So we'll see what they decide to do and see if he does in fact decide to run the All-Star race this year. It sounds like right now he is not planning to run it, which is a great shame. I want to see him run the All-Star race because I think he would do an excellent and a really, really great job. But at this moment, at this current time, he will not be running the All-Star race, which, like I said, I think is a great shame. I really hope they change their minds and let him run the All-Star race in 2024 because I certainly think he would be very, very successful. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brett Moffitt. As it was announced yesterday morning that Brett Moffitt is going to drive the one truck for Trion Garage for select races throughout the 2024 season. His first race is going to come at Kansas next weekend, and he's got some other races scheduled for 2024, but those will come at due time, and those will be announced in the not-so-distant future. Brett Moffitt, in my opinion, is really great to see that he is getting the chance to an opportunity race with Trion Garage. This is going to be the best opportunity I think he's had since probably driving for GMS Racing. Brett Moffitt, obviously, there was a lot of rumors and rumblings this year that he was going to drive a second Front Row Motorsports truck this upcoming season, but unfortunately the funding did not go through, and Front Row made the decision to go ahead and only one run truck this year, that of course being for Lane Riggs. Even though Lane Riggs, I think, has struggled quite a bit, and I'm going to be real and honest, I think that Brett Moffitt would have done a better job in that 38 truck than Lane Riggs. Last year, Brett Moffitt drove full-time for AM Racing in the number 25 car. He actually ran really, really well. Got 7 or 8 top 10s, if I'm not mistaken, and finished inside the top 15 in points. And let's be real and honest, Hailie Deegan, she hasn't done a lot this year so far with AM Racing. Granted, they are still an underfunded team, but she just got the best finish for a female driver at Talladega this past weekend. But going back to Brett Moffitt driving for Trion Garage, I realistically do believe that Brett Moffitt is going to be a race-winning contender. I think he is going to contend for the win at Kansas. Trion Garage has been really, really strong. I don't think they're the best organization in the truck series, but they're one of the best teams in the field. And I think that Brett Moffitt, realistically, he's going to have to go through drivers like Roger Carruth and Cory Heim throughout the event, and even Nick Sanchez, but I do believe that Brett Moffitt is going to have that opportunity. I think he'll do a very, very solid and great job with that team. Again, I realistically think he could win Kansas. I think he's won there before. He's almost won there for now. Actually, yeah, he did win at Kansas back in 2020 with GMS. So I certainly think he's going to have a very good chance and opportunity to work with this team and go out there and win. A great opportunity for Brett Moffitt. I think this is a well-earned opportunity. I'm glad to see that he's at least part-time in the series. I still realistically think he should be full-time. I think he's a great driver. I really hope he gets a chance and opportunity maybe to run more races than he's got regularly scheduled. But again, it's just exciting and great to see that Brett Moffitt will at least be in the truck series part-time in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, a fan of RFK asked a question, I think it was like Stephen Larimore, something like that on Twitter, asked a question about the potential of RFK running the Sage 60 car once again in 2024 because if I'm not mistaken, Sage 60 was supposed to run more races than were originally scheduled for this year. Well, RFK Racing responded to the question, and it sounds like they're teasing more races for their Sage 60 program in 2024. The Sage 60 car made its debut at the Daytona 500 where David Ragan drove the car. I don't remember where that car finished, but I think that car did finish inside the top 20 or the top 25 in the event. Obviously, with David Ragan being a very good super speedway racer, was up front in quite a bit of the race, so they were having issues with fuel mileage, if I'm not mistaken. I think realistically, David Ragan still got a really good finish at Daytona. Now, who could they get behind the wheel of the Sage 60 car? There were a lot of rumors and rumblings, I remember, in the offseason that they were going to bring Cam Waters in. Cam Waters obviously is making another Truck Series start next week at Kansas with Door Sport Racing, and there were rumors during the offseason that Cam Waters was in fact going to drive a Sage 60 car at multiple races this year. That could still be a possibility, but with Cam Waters being fully focused on supercars at the moment right now, I am not entirely sure if that is going to be a possibility. What about some other drivers in the Ford camp, like Cole Custer perhaps? What about Hailie Deegan making her Cup Series debut? I know it sounded a little crazy for suggesting that, but what about Hailie Deegan? I think Hailie Deegan would do an okay job. What about Matt DiBenedetto? Matt DiBenedetto is a driver who is working with Viking Motorsports, a Ford team. I think he's done a really incredible job with that team so far in 2024. And realistically, if I was a team like RFK and Matt DiBenedetto was available, I would certainly hire him. And you think about some drivers on the outside, like a Mike Rockenfeller that is in IMSA working with the Ford group. What about other potential possibilities, like maybe bring Carl Edwards out of retirement? That'd be really cool if we got a chance to work with them. That probably won't happen. But what about Carl Edwards maybe? What about someone else that we don't know at this point? It'd be very interesting to see who they do in fact decide to go and get to drive this car. But I love the fact that they are planning to bring the Sage 60 car out. Again, I know they've got some races scheduled, hopefully. I think they're going to run some road course races. And I know they want to expand to 3 full-time cars, that being RFK Racing. They want to expand to IMSA as well. But they really do want to expand into other forms. They want to go to IMSA, and they want to have a 3rd full-time Cup car in 2025. We'll see what ends up happening, but I'm glad to see that RFK looks like they are going to bring the Sage 60 car back. The question is, how many races are they going to run the rest of the year? That is still to be determined, but they're still working on that currently at the moment. We'll see if they decide to run more races in the 2024 season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 3 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about the All-Star race, as the 2024 All-Star race format has been officially announced. So there's a lot of things that need to be noted, and there's a lot of information to go over. So the heat races obviously are going to be on Saturday. There are going to be 2 heat races, and those are going to be 60 laps each, basically splitting the field that is already locked into the event, which gets to the drivers who are locked into the event currently at the moment. But there will be 2 heats where the field will be split equally. There will be then open on Sunday, the main open race, which will be 100 laps, and it will be a halfway break on lap number 50. And then the main race, which will be the rain race, I think is going to be at 5 or 5:30 p.m. Eastern or something like that. So the race is actually going to be a little earlier this year, I believe, or the open's probably going to be at 5, and the main race is probably going to be a little later in the day. The main All-Star race is going to be 200 laps, and there is going to be different tires, which we'll get to in a second, but the race is going to be broken up in half. We'll have a lap 100 will be the halfway break, and there will be some changes required on the cars. Now, the really big thing that is different with this year's All-Star race compared to last year is there are going to be different sets of tires for this year's event. There will be 2 prime tires that are going to be run over the weekend, and there's going to be option tires. These option tires are going to basically be kind of like the wet weather tires, and the hope is create a lot of wear and tear for the event, because we know the short track racing has not been great this year, so they're hoping that they can create a lot more wear on the tires so that fall off can be a big thing. Now, the current drivers that are locked into the All-Star race are Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, AJ Allmendinger, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, William Byron, Michael McDowell, Tyler Reddick, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Daniel Suarez. Notable drivers that are not locked into the event are Alex Bowman in the 48, Bubba Wallace to 23, and there's a few other big names like Ty Gibbs as well, who is not locked in to the main event. And the currently fan voting is going on as we speak. I believe you have until the 1st or 2nd week of May to get that finalized and done. Obviously, looking at the All-Star format, it's pretty much straightforward, to be honest. It's a pretty solid format if you ask me. 200 laps kind of similar to last year. But the big thing is the tires. I really appreciate NASCAR for trying something new and trying something different, especially with the tires. Because let's be real and honest, we all know that the short track racing has not been good. And we talked about the repave, I think, where Joey Logano said during basically when they were testing in North Wilkesboro, when it got warmer, when they put rubber down, there was no tire fall off. That is something I am a little worried about, is that maybe the tires are not too differential. But I will give Goodyear a lot of credit for trying something new and trying something different. They've got to spice up the short track racing. The easiest solution when it comes to short tracks, right, is basically adding more horsepower. But NASCAR stated publicly they're not planning to do that, which I don't really think makes a lot of sense, right? Because I personally think that they need to add horsepower to this car to really fix the short track racing. But at least they're trying something different and trying something new for this All-Star race. Because last year's All-Star race, let's just be real and honest, and again, it's all down to the short track package. Last year's All-Star race was just not very good in my opinion. It was pretty boring, even though Kyle Larson, who is my favorite driver, by the way, was able to go out there and win the race. I still think the race itself was not the most exciting, and it was kind of boring. It's going to be very kind of interesting to see how things play out during this year's All-Star race. I really hope the race itself is hopefully good. We'll see how the race goes, and we'll see how it plays out in 2024. Nonetheless, I think it's a very solid All-Star format, and I'm glad to see they're at least trying out something new, and they've got some new tires coming in, which will hopefully create some potential passing opportunities and can create a better racing product for sure. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Erik Jones. As Erik Jones confirmed sadly yesterday that he will not be racing at Dover this weekend. It was confirmed from Legacy Motor Club that Erik Jones has suffered a compression fracture in the lower vertebrae. We'll get to his replacement in just a second for the short term. For those who did not watch the NASCAR Cup Series race, Erik Jones was involved in a very bad and scary wreck around 35 laps to go. The Toyotas were trying to play a really interesting strategy at this particular moment and point in the race, and they all just had a bunch of really terrible pushes and shoves going into turn number 3. They all pushed each other. John Hunter gave a bad push to Bubba Wallace, I believe, and there were just a ton of bad pushes that sadly ended up taking place. Then Erik Jones went up to the outside wall really hard at over 180 miles an hour. On the radio, he was complaining about his back. He had a ton of pain, and it took the medical crew a little bit longer to get him out of the car. Then he went to the infield care center and really got checked and released within about 10 minutes and was speaking to the media and said, "I'm fine, I'm just going to be a little sore." Then about an hour or two after the Cup Series race concluded, Erik Jones returned to the infield care center and was basically transported to the UAB University Hospital that evening. Then he was released from the hospital at 11:30 Central Standard Time and was sent home back to North Carolina and went back in, and doctors confirmed that he had a compression fracture in the lower vertebrae. Back injuries are very, very serious. It is one thing that we take very, very seriously, and I'm glad that Erik Jones is taking this very, very seriously. The first thing is I'm wishing Erik Jones the best of luck here. I don't want Erik Jones to rush his way back. When we look at timetables of other drivers who have suffered back injuries, Alex Bowman missed about 4 or 5 weeks and kind of struggled when he came back. Denny Hamlin, who had a back injury back in 2013, he missed 4 or 5 weeks and then struggled for the rest of the year. And Aric Almirola, he missed 8 weeks and then eventually struggled most of the rest of the year. Erik Jones needs to take his time. From what I know, it takes about 6 to 12 weeks for the backs to fully recover. And you're still going to have some of those lingering effects that are going to end up happening at that point. So, Erik Jones, I'm wishing the best of luck. And again, I don't want him rushing his way back into a Cup Series car. The most important thing for him is to try to recover from his injuries and get back as soon as possible. But again, just take your time and don't rush your way back. I don't want a driver rushing their way back and then potentially getting another injury going forward. I do think Erik Jones will be back at some point in the future, but as of right now, he will not be behind the wheel of the 43 car, which is really, really disappointing and unfortunate. I've seen a lot of people calling out the next-gen car in this situation. To me, this is just something that would happen in any of the generations of cars. I really am not going to blame the next-gen car for this crash because certainly I don't think the next-gen car is at fault. If you hit the wall head-on at 180 miles an hour, you're more than likely going to get hurt. Unfortunately, that's just sad reality and truth because 180, 190 miles an hour, you're going to hit the wall really hard and it can be very, very scary. So again, wishing Erik Jones the best of luck and wishing him a speedy recovery. So now we talk about who his replacement is going to be. Well, his replacement is going to be the reserve driver for Legacy in 2311 Racing, and that is Cory Heim. Cory Heim currently drives a number 11 truck for Trion Garage in the Craftsman Truck Series, and Cory Heim has been doing an extremely well job in the Truck Series the last couple of years. He has scored 4 wins in the last 2 seasons combined, and his average finish is a 6.8 in the last 2 seasons. On top of that as well, Cory Heim this year so far has a 3.8 average finish, with his worst finish, I believe, being in 10th, and I think he's finished in the top 10 in every single race so far this season. Now, on Erik Jones, he has received a medical waiver, and he will be cleared once he does come back. He will be good to go. But going back to Cory Heim, this is a huge opportunity for Cory Heim. Unfortunately, it's in bad circumstances, but this is an amazing and great opportunity for Cory Heim. Realistically, I think the goal is to just get and learn as much as you can and learn as much as possible, because it is a very, very big opportunity for him. Again, I think he's an extremely talented driver, and he's basically auditioning for Cup Series right next year. And obviously, with the rumors of legacy could potentially expand in 2025, especially with 2311 Racing being also rumored to potentially be expanding in the 2025 season, this could be a really good audition move for him to get an opportunity to run in this series. I think that Cory Heim is absolutely ready for the Cup Series, and he's going to have a busy weekend as well, because not only is he making his Cup Series debut with Legacy Motor Club, but he's also driving the number 26 for Sam Hunt Racing as well this weekend. So I think he's got a chance to win that race, because he's been decent at Dover in the past. But now I think he's ran at Dover once or twice, and I think he was pretty solid at the track last year. But I think that we're going to see him have a good chance and opportunity. But again, going back to Erik Jones, wishing him the best of luck and wishing him speedy recovery. Realistically, I think he's going to be out for at least the short-term future. I don't think he comes back at least till June, to be honest. I think he's probably going to at least wait till Memorial Day weekend to basically make a decision if he's going to come back then. But I think realistically, Gateway could be the first race that comes back. But again, I don't want him to suffer anymore and basically come back and then unfortunately get an injury. I'm wishing him the best of luck and hoping for a speedy recovery for Erik Jones during this time. It's a really unfortunate situation, a scary wreck like that. And I'm really wishing him the best of luck. Hopefully, Erik Jones can be back at the racetrack soon. But once again, congratulations, Cory Heim, on a great opportunity here. I know it's unfortunate circumstances, but I'm wishing Erik Jones the best of luck and hoping for a speedy recovery. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about JTG Daugherty Racing. It looks like the first potential big silly season domino is about to fall. According to Adam Stern, Kroger could be on the move to another team in NASCAR in 2025 as part of a possible ownership shakeup at JTG. According to the report that came out from Adam Stern and sources have told him, it sounds like that Kroger might be headed over to Joe Gibbs Racing. We'll talk about the future of JT Daugherty here in just a second, but let's talk about Kroger. Kroger has been part of JTG Daugherty Racing since 2010, and Kroger Racing has had a big partnership with Chad Gisbergen and Jody Gisbergen over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, and they become a big integral part. We have seen a lot of Kroger branding in companies that work inside of Kroger that have sponsored Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for the last few years. You think about JTG Daugherty Racing and the history of the organization, and again, we'll get to that here in just a second and a little bit. But if Kroger does in fact move over to Joe Gibbs Racing, that is going to be huge. You think about the future of Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs is starting to get a lot older. Joe Gibbs is now in his 80s, and I think Joe Gibbs is starting to realize that. Last year, he brought the Harris Blitzer Group in, and they have taken an ownership stake, a minority ownership stake, in the company. Heather Gibbs, who is Ty Gibbs' mother, is starting to work in the day-to-day operations of the company. And now you've potentially got Kroger and Tad Gisbergen, who was friends of JD Gibbs back in the day. And remember, JTG Daugherty Racing started off as a Toyota organization. They basically work really, really well with the Toyota group, and it had alliance, I believe, MWR and Joe Gibbs Racing back 2009 through 2013. But obviously then they switched over to Chevy in 2014. If the Gisbergens go over and take an ownership stake into Joe Gibbs Racing, that is going to be huge for the future of JTG Daugherty. Which now, let's transition to talk about JTG Daugherty Racing. So what does this mean for the future of JTG Daugherty Racing for their future in NASCAR? Well, if Tad and Jody Gisbergen and Gordon Smith and his group do in fact go over and work with Joe Gibbs Racing, I unfortunately think this is the end for JTG Daugherty, unless Brad Daugherty can keep the organization running. But realistically, I think a charter is going to go up for sale. And if a charter does in fact end up going for sale, that means that the charter market is going to drop, which we'll speculate on that here in just a second. But you think of the history of JTG Daugherty Racing. JTG has been around for a very, very long time. Not in the Cup Series, but in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series as well. I think they won races with Kevin LePage in the 47 group back in the day, and they also were in Xfinity with drivers like Robert Presley. And that 47 car had drivers like John Wood and Robert Presley, and I think at one point they even had, I believe if I'm not mistaken, Stacey Compton drive for their group, and the number 59 car, which I think won Talladega back in 2002, if I'm not mistaken as well. So they've had a lot of success in the NASCAR Xfinity Series back in the day, but then they put all their focus on the Cup Series. They switched to Toyota in 2009. They had Marcus Ambrose drive for them, which we still miss Marcus Ambrose to this day. And then they had Bobby Labonte starting in 2011. Marcus Ambrose went over to Richard Petty Motorsports. And then, of course, then they got AJ Allmendinger from 2014. Well, it started in 2013 because Bobby Labonte got let go early. And they basically then brought Allmendinger to finish in the rest of the season. Allmendinger stayed in 2018, but then they also got a second car at one point, the 37 car, but then they sold that charter off, I think, to Spire Motorsports, if I remember correctly. Allmendinger left. They got Chris Buescher, Ryan Preece for a little bit, and then, of course, Ryan Preece left the organization, and they brought Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in to the 47 car starting in 2020. So that is huge if they lose it. Now, what happens to Ricky Stenhouse Jr.? Because with this rumor coming out, I think this could be the end for Stenhouse, at least full-time in the Cup Series. The only options that are going to be available are maybe the 21 for the Wood Brothers, because let's be honest, Stenhouse did drive for the Wood Brothers for a little bit in 2011, made his debut in the 21, and was part of Ford for a very, very long time. And I think Stenhouse would be an upgrade over Harrison Burton if he was to go over there, because I think Harrison Burton's been struggling. There's rumors that Harrison Burton could be out at the end of the year, so obviously there could be a place for Stenhouse. But realistically, I think that he will go over back to Xfinity. He had a lot of success in Xfinity. Say what you want to say. He's a two-time Xfinity champion. And I think Stenhouse is a talented driver. And like I said, I think he'd be very, very successful in the Xfinity Series. Maybe he goes to Junior Motorsports. Maybe he goes over to Kaulig Racing perhaps. If SVG makes a jump up full-time next year, that could be certainly a possibility in 2025. Now, what happens to that charter? Like I said, if JTG and Jad and Chody do go over to JGR, I think JTG Daugherty Racing is going to shut down their program. I don't think Brad Daugherty is going to continue it. I don't know how involved Brad Daugherty is in JTG Daugherty anymore. I don't know if he's completely involved, unless he can find a way to bring a team like Junior Motorsports in to help out, which, let's be real and honest, we know that Dale Jr.'s interested in going Cup Series racing. They're still in the rumblings to pick up a charter at this point, so maybe they try to go after Dale Jr. and try to bring Jr. into the Cup, because Brad and Dale have worked together for many, many years. I don't know if Brad is still working with NBC at this point, but that could be a potential possibility. But getting back into this story, this is going to start a lot of things, because if a charter does go up for the market, the value is going to drop from $40 million probably down to $20 to $25 million, because you look at how many charters could be available. A lot of rumors that Stewart Haas Racing could be downsizing their program at the end of this year to a two-car program. That means two charters could be available there. And then you think about maybe rumors of Kaulig Racing potentially downsizing. There could be 4 or 5 charters up. There could be a lot of supply on the charters next year, but not a lot of demand. And right now, from what we've heard, the only teams that are buying charters are teams inside of NASCAR. So, and obviously, we still don't know what's going on with the charter agreement. Now, who would pick up the JTG Daugherty charters, perhaps? Who is in the running for charters? Well, 2311 Racing, they're in the running for a charter. They want to expand a third car. We know that for a fact. I know Denny's kind of denied that, but once a charter agreement gets finalized, I think they're going to go after and get a charter, and I think they're going to do it either for Cory Heim, maybe do it for Chandler Smith, do it for somebody else like that, or maybe get Carl Edwards or Kurt Busch out of retirement. That could be a possibility. We know Trackhouse Racing's interested in expanding. They want to have 4 full-time cars next year from what we understand, and they want Shane Van Gisbergen full-time, and they want to integrate Zane Smith in. You've got, of course, other teams like RFK Racing who want to expand to a third car potentially in the future, bring someone in like a Haley Deegan and Cup in the future, perhaps, or some of the Ford talent like Riley Herbst and Cole Custer, especially with the rumors of SHR downsizing. Cole Custer may not have a seat next year in Xfinity. And then, of course, you think about other teams like Junior Motorsports and Legacy Motor Club. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens at this point, but I think JTG Daugherty Racing more than likely will shut down if this move ends up taking place. So that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Let's go to that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think JTG Daugherty is actually going to shut down? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Erik Jones? Are you wishing the best of luck? And what are your thoughts about the All-Star format? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm not sure if there's going to be any more videos dropping today. Tomorrow, we're going to have 2025 NASCAR schedule predictions dropping, which is going to be really exciting. And we're also going to have the paint skin video more than likely dropping as well. If any major news breaks, we'll have it on the channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.